Hi, my name is Jennifer Perry, and I'm here to discuss with you the topic that I have chosen, play-based therapy. Now, hearing that phrase, it seems self-explanatory what I'm going to discuss, but bear with me while I go through some of the definitions of this technique, some of its benefits, and some examples of play therapy that I've used in a variety of different settings. Now, play-based therapy is a therapy technique that involves games and play. Seems simple enough, right? Not exactly. Unlike typical play therapy is structured and it's based on the child's needs as well as the potential targets and the goals set out. Now, using a variety of different games, a therapist can select certain games that would elicit specific language goals and then tailor their lessons and therapy sessions to the child's needs and preferences. Now, there are many benefits to play-based therapy, but here are the top 5 reasons. Now, play-based therapy is very natural. Now, when you think of a speech therapy session, oftentimes you think of a client and a clinician sitting at a table, practicing sounds, working on different responses, basically sitting together and practicing in a drill-style format. But for many children, having an adult focus solely on them in that manner can be very intimidating. Play, however, is much more casual, it's less intense, and it's a very natural way for children to interact with others and to learn. Play therapy is a very dynamic form of therapy, in that you can customize the style of play based on each case. Now, different toys can be used in different settings to elicit different types of language. Also, clients have varying tastes, not only in the type of games that you play, but in the themes as well. Some examples that I've worked with include movies like Despicable Me, TV shows like SpongeBob SquarePants, or video games like Mario Brothers. Now, when I'm planning my lessons for my clients, I can often factor in their preferences, and this makes the session more entertaining and more engaging. I can print out coloring pages for the characters from Chuggington, or I can buy a Dr. Seuss themed memory match game. And as the client grows up, the games can be altered according to their needs, and themes can change. The possibilities are really endless. Now, play-based therapy is also appropriate for all ages. Now think, when you're working with very young clients, such as toddlers, oftentimes we rely on play therapy, crawling around on the floor and trying to get a small child to respond to us. But what's stopping us from using this with older children? You don't necessarily need to crawl around on the floor with an older child, obviously. But because of the nature to be varied, play therapy can be used for a variety of ages and a variety of abilities. Again, it's about considering the client's abilities, their strengths, their goals, and their preferences. Knowing these details, a play-based therapy approach can be used in almost any situation. Now, play-based therapy is open to generalization. Play-based therapy can be performed in a variety of different settings. It can be in a group or individual therapy session, in home, or generalized in the public. In addition, play therapy is not just limited to the therapist, but families can participate as well. Now, from a parent's perspective, it can often be difficult to come up with ways to work on speech goals at home. Instead of sitting at a table trying to recreate a therapy session, the family has the option to play a game. Now, home training a parent on how to play games is much easier than trying to teach them techniques to practice in a drill format, for example. And that'll more naturally target goals. This also has the added benefit of not only helping the child reach those goals sooner and in a non-clinical setting, but it also fosters that bond between the family and the client. It allows the family to also feel empowered and part of the treatment team when they can work with their child in this way. Furthermore, many of the goals that are chosen in therapy are games that a client would play with their peers, so that allows for more generalized opportunities during play dates and at school as well. Play-based therapy is just good fun. Now, as a graduate student, I've had to spend many hours listening to lectures, memorizing facts, and practicing different drill exercises in order to learn and then advance through my classes. It's very boring, and to be honest, I really don't remember a lot of those experiences. Now, when you think about your time in school, do you remember the timed quizzes or the popped assignments that come up randomly? Or do you remember the field trips that you took, the science experiments that you designed, and the presentations that you gave? I'm going to guess that you probably remember the fun stuff too. Now, making an activity fun doesn't just keep your client engaged. It actually leaves a more lasting impression and then they can take these lessons and then apply them into the real world. Now it's time for the fun part, checking out all of the games. As you can see, I have a lot of toys that I use, and this is just a small sampling. Now, I could go through all of these, but for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on 4 of my favorite games. I've used these games with clients that are between the ages of 5 and 10. Most have a diagnosis of autism, in addition to having language impairments, and their cases and demographics are varied as well. So one of the games that I like to use is this game called Hullabaloo. It's made for children aged 4 to 10, although you can use it for older children as well. And the concept of the game is very simple. You turn on the machine and it'll give you instructions on how to move to the different targets or flags that I have here. So, for example, the machine may tell you to crawl to a yellow, in which case you would go to one of the yellow flags. In this case, we have a circle with an ice cream cone, a triangle with a guitar, or a square with an elephant. Now, this game does focus quite a bit on receptive communication. However, the way I play it, I kind of tweak it to get more expressive language out of my clients. For example, whenever the machine will tell me to go to the designated target, like the yellow, for example, my client and I will shout out where we landed. Oh, I picked the circle with the ice cream on it, or I picked the elephant with that's on the square. There's lots of ways to alter it, so that way you can get more communication out of it. Another way that I've played it before in the past, is that my client will listen to what the instruction is, and then he'll tell me where to go. So if it says, for example, to hop to a green, he'll tell me, hey Jennifer, go to the triangle, it has a tiger on it. There's lots of ways that you can modify this game. Like I said, it's really great about expressing different shapes and colors, and it also helps the client learn how to identify different shapes, different colors, and different categories. Because sometimes, aside from shapes, it'll also tell you animals, or food, or instruments. The other wonderful thing about this game, especially for kiddos that may have a sensory need or are having a hard time sitting still during a session, is that there is a movement-based component to it. And this is very good for helping get some of the wiggles out that a lot of our kiddos seem to have. Another game that I like to play with my clients is charades. Now, charades, in terms of ages, it tends to vary depending on what targets you're hitting or what kind of cards you're using. But generally, kids that are over the age of 4 do well with this game. Now, for those who don't know, charades is when you try to act out a certain action, a person, an emotion, and try to get somebody else to figure out what you're trying to express without actually saying what it is that you're trying to get them to guess. Now, one of the cool things about charades is it's highly adaptable. You can do something simple as emotions, or you can do occupations, you can do animals. There's lots of variety there. The other neat thing about charades that I personally like is that you can customize your own games. So for example, I have here some laminated sheets that I've made that have different icons on them. So for example, this one is my emotion sheet. So you have surprised here, sad, disappointed, angry. These are all emotions that you can convey on your face, and it helps our clients to understand possible nonverbal cues that you're trying to convey. When you take these sheets, you can cut them up, punch holes in them, and then you have these handy dandy rings, which are easy enough to replace. You just print out another sheet and laminate it, and just get another ring and a hole puncher. And they're highly portable, and again, you can take out ones that your client might be struggling with. I mean, for example, how many 4-year-olds know exactly what embarrassed is? Kind of have an idea, but they don't necessarily know how to verbalize it. So you can stick with the basics. Angry, sad, mad, that sort of thing. As they get older, you can add on other things. So, for example, this is one that says, it's hard to read, but it says, I'm watching a scary movie. So you can act out watching a movie that frightens you, or picking flowers to make a pretty bouquet. So in addition to nonverbal cues, you can actually target articulation with charades as well. Here I have an app that I found on the App Store that's available for iPad that targets articulation in charades. And the way that it works is actually pretty simple. You could do this in a paper version as well, but for a couple of dollars you have it on your iPad and it's a little more convenient to carry around. So first you would pick what your target is. In this case we're going to do the S target. So here we have different options. Should we target S in the initial position? Should we do S blends? Should we do a mixed variety where it will target in different positions as well as the S blends? Once you make the selection, you'll go to this screen where the game starts. You have a timer up here to tell you how much time you have, and you're trying to get as many words as possible within that time frame. So when you do charades, usually you just act it out. But for some of the younger kiddos, or for words that are more difficult, you actually can use words as well. You just wouldn't necessarily say the target word. If the child is able to produce the correct phoneme and say it correctly as well, you would click on the Count It button. If they, however, were missing the proper pronunciation, you would go ahead and hit Skip It, because they've already guessed the answer. At the end, you have this tally here that tells you how many times the child got an answer correct, and also how many words you would have gone through during that time frame. Using this, you can calculate about how many times they're successful at hitting their target in that specific position. And this is data that you can then transfer into your SOAP notes and use later on to evaluate the child's skills and to see how their progress is doing with the specific targets. So this is Guess Who. This is a question and answer game in which you're asking your opponent different questions to try to figure out what character or who they've selected to be. So for example, you'd move this little tab here and you'd identify a specific character. Then through a process of elimination by asking questions, you try to eliminate all the other characters in order to figure out who your opponent is. So for example, is your person bald? No. Does your person have a mustache? No. Is your person a female? No. So in the end, you'd end up with one person, and that ultimately would give you your answer as to who your opponent is trying to be. Now, this is a great game for question formulation because it has you ask a variety of questions. It also uses descriptors. So for example, with this card, this is all different types of people. You can ask questions like, is your person a female? Does your person wear a hat? Or do they have glasses? This version in particular actually has different cards, so you can ask even more questions. For examples with foods, are you a fruit or are you a dessert, like the donuts? This is the animals card, and this is again, you can ask a variety of questions. Do you have 2 legs like a bird or 4 legs like a dog? Are you furry like a cat or are you scaly like a snake? The last card is an underwater card, which again, you could use other descriptors for. Are you squishy like a squid? Or are you hard like a clam? Do you have lots of legs like this squid here? Or do you have pincers just like this lobster? So using these cards, you can elicit quite a few, not only different types of questions, but quite a few descriptors as well. So this is Headbands. It's a very popular game, and it's appropriate for ages 4 and up. This game has many different varieties. In fact, in my house, the Disney version happens to be a very popular game during game night. So the way that you play Headbands can be one of 2 ways. The traditional way is for you to wear the headband and then ask your opponents questions about the card. Am I an animal? Am I big? Am I alive? Am I a thing? What color am I? To figure out what the card is. However, I tend to play it another way with my clients. They'll wear the card just as I am right now, which I believe right now is a tiger. So then what I will do to help them to figure out what that item is, I'll give them a description. For example, I'm a large cat that lives in the jungle. I'm very big and ferocious. I'm orange with black stripes. And that would elicit the response of a tiger from my client. It's a really great way to have them, again, use adjectives and different descriptors to describe what it is they're seeing. Also, on the flip side, you could also continue to work on question formulation. Like, what color is it? How many legs do I have? Is it an animal or is it a vegetable? Again, this game is a very flexible game, and you can tweak and alter it for however you need to with your clients. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation that I've had on play therapy, and that I've given you a couple of ideas that you can use in your own therapy sessions. I've created a handout on a PowerPoint presentation that I've created for you to download, and at the very last page is a couple of websites that I happen to find very useful when beginning my project and things that I've gone back to over the course of my career. If you have any other questions, by all means, Google search play therapy. There's endless numbers of different opportunities and different ways that you can incorporate play into your therapy. Well, thank you very much.